welcome everyone to the Ethical Hacking Guests and Wholesomeness stream. I'm going to start with a disclaimer. We are just, talking about cybersecurity and sharing knowledge and, trying to inspire some people to enter the field. Why am I here and who I am? Most of all, my name is Dorota. I'm a penetration tester, and in my previous job, I was called I won one woman army, so I used it here. And yeah, but like most of all, I wanted to highlight people that are important to me, that are inspiring to me, that actually maybe helped me in some way to get where I am now. Some of those guests actually. So hi guys, again, full screen. This is Ivan.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Evan Ottinger. I'm a current red teamer. Previously worked at TCM Security for a couple years. Um, been a software engineer before that for a few more years, and before that, prior military. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for coming. Can you share who you are, more about yourself, and uh, can you also share, like, when you're going to say that a moment in your career that made you realize, yep, that's what I meant to do. What made you like figure out that you really want to work as an offensive security specialist?
Yeah, so like I said, I was prior military. I worked in the United States Marine Corps for 5 years as a signals intelligence operator. Um, Along the way, I sort of realized that that's kind of akin to like hacking, but for communications. And then I also had an interest in IT since I was a kid, so I kind of just followed that thought process to the logical conclusion. I wound up in getting into cybersecurity and specifically studying offensive security and things like that. I think I've known I wanted to be a penetration tester for probably the last 3 or 4 years, and um, actually skipped over that for the most part and landed a role as a red teamer. So I've been doing that for the past 6 months. Um, yeah. So.
Yeah, thank you. And can you maybe explain what does a typical day look like for you as a red teamer?
Okay, so it depends on the client, of course. A fairly typical day for me would be akin to like a 9 to 5. Um, you know, uh, we get assigned like operations, and typically the operation is a specific HVT for a client, HVT being high value target. And our goal is to compromise the target somehow, ideally without being caught, since it is a red team engagement. So for the beginning of an operation, of course, they're time scoped. Typically, a penetration test would be something like a week to 2 weeks, maybe 3 on the longer end. So for a red team engagement, they could be months long, and that's the case for my current role. We typically do 90-day operations. A lot of places do much longer ones, like 6, 9 months, something like that. Um, and so the idea is we get assigned like a target, and then our goal is to do open source intelligence on the target, research it, find out as much as we can about it, and then from there we want to start trying to do active reconnaissance against the client and just look for a way in. And then once we get into the network, then we start trying to pivot around and get closer to our target, ideally with the goal being to totally compromise the high value target. And at that point, you typically want to demonstrate impact. So you want to, um, try to exfiltrate as much data as possible. And um, of course, at the end, you got a good old fashioned report that you have to write. So um, it kind of goes through that process. Of course, we kind of iterate back through like reconnaissance. So if you get into a new segment of the network, you have to go back to square one and start doing recon again. So it just kind of goes through the phases of like a what you would think of as a penetration test, but it's much longer, and it's typically we can do things, or we can get away with doing things that you couldn't do on like a penetration test. There's more
Yeah.
things in scope, um, and yeah, that's kind of the idea.
That's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing. But are there like other like differences between penetration testing and red teaming in practice, or other than the length of the engagement and what you can do?
Yeah, like I said, I think the main difference is probably stealth.
Okay,
So
yeah.
for a red team penetration test, you're just hammering a target kind of relentlessly. That's where you do a lot of like large volume password spraying attacks, things like that, things that'll make a lot of noise. Um, you know, there's always room for like a little bit of nuance here where like maybe as a penetration tester, if you're going up against a more mature environment, you might start out quieter. And then if you find that you're able to easily breach the environment, you might gradually ramp the noise up over time. So as a red teamer, you kind of want to stay under the radar as much as possible, because if you get caught, things happen. Like it takes time to set up infrastructure and things like that for operation security. So if you get caught, it essentially burns the infrastructure and you have to kind of start over from square one. Um, so yeah, I think operational security is probably the bigger difference. Also, yeah, the link like we mentioned, and I think those are the main differences, honestly.
Yeah, but and you
But
have to write the report at the end, and there's like an executive summary in it. So, and you
yeah,
present it to the client. So that's pretty much like the same, I think. But just like I think the length, the stealth, and what is allowed, like like you don't really have your hands tied behind your back, kind of like in a pen test. I feel sometimes, but yeah, you just go, I think, all in. And
yeah,
probably, yeah, well, probably, I don't know. I've never been on a red teaming engagement myself, but I expect the deny of service is out of scope in those as well.
yeah.
Because,
Typically, I
yeah,
mean, if you find that you could cause a denial of service condition, you might note that. So say you found a system that has an unpatched piece of software running on it and it's got a denial of service CVE, you would definitely note that in the report. It would go under something like a suggested hardening recommendation, something like that, where you say, hey, we found this in the environment. It could potentially cause a denial of service condition if if somebody's exploiting this vulnerability. We recommend that you take these steps to prevent that from happening, but typically you don't want to validate those because the goal is to do all of this without disrupting any business scenarios. So if you interrupt the business, then you're causing more trouble than it's probably worth at that point. So
yeah.
yeah, that's a good point. Um, it completely depends on the client too. Some of them they just kind of tell you to go nuts. Others they have more strict rules. Particularly like the government sector versus the private sector. There's typically more red tape in the government sector. Private sector, they have a little bit more leeway because they don't have to adhere to certain standards and reporting standards and things like that. They don't have quite as much oversight. Um, so, for example, like a cybersecurity director for a company has a little bit more room or more wiggle room than the cybersecurity director for like a government agency. But typically, yeah, you get to do like all the things. Social engineering is usually in scope.
Oh,
Sometimes physical engagements are in scope. The idea though is you want to tailor your attacks. Like you're more likely to get approved to do like a spear phishing type of social engineering attack than you would be to just like spray out a bunch of spam to the entire staff and hope somebody clicks the link. You typically want to tailor your attacks to be a little bit more conscious of the target and like what you're trying to get to, and have a specific purpose in mind for why you're executing that attack. So as far as the reporting goes, penetration testing, typically the report, it has like a list of the findings and then recommendations for remediation. Um, the biggest difference that I've seen with red team engagement reports, at least for my organization, is that we do like they call it like a attack narrative, and that's basically a almost like a story about how a actual adversary would approach the environment to like exploit the same vulnerabilities that we exploited, or to identify and put together the attack chain to get to the target that the red team performed. So typically the reports that I've seen have been quite a bit longer than a standard penetration testing report. because of that narrative component.
Also, I
But
have a comment. Sorry,
yeah, no, you're fine.
I have a comment in the channel chat that I guess the tool set would change a lot too, between like red teaming engagement and pen test maybe. And there is also a question: do you have a mission on site or mostly remote access to the target?
So the first question about the tool set. So the tool sets, it varies. A lot of organizations, a lot of red teams, especially internal red teams that have been well established, they're going to have their own internal tooling. There's a few reasons for that, and I'll get to that in a second. But for the most part, um, the tools are pretty much the same. I mean, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? So if you're scanning like a class B network, you're probably going to use mass scan, and that's pretty typical for like a penetration test on a large network. Same as you're going to use nmap for like an in-depth port scan and things like that. Um, where it varies is when you get into things like C2 frameworks, like command and control. Um, a lot of organizations want to write their own because they are less likely to get picked up by endpoint detection and response and antivirus and things like that because they are custom. But at the very least, you're going to want to write like custom implants and stuff and test them in a lab environment to make sure that your targets EDRs are not going to pick up on that based on signatures or heuristics or things like that. Um, so it's kind of a hybrid. You're going to use the right tool for the job. Sometimes an off-the-shelf tool works perfectly. Sometimes you might need to modify a tool or write a wrapper for it or something to obfuscate it, to kind of disguise the output or to change the behavior a little bit so it doesn't get flagged by network detections and things. And then other times you're just going to write your own tool. It might be you might be going up against a completely custom service or something that you're trying to exploit, and in that case, you may need to write your own tool for that. Um, but yeah, the main reason that organizations would adopt their own internal tools would be to avoid detections. And then remind me the other question.
Do you have mission on site or mostly remote access to the target?
At my current organization, I haven't done any physicals. I have done physicals in the past. I've only done two, but a total of 4 sites, but for 2 clients. Um, yeah,
So it's mostly remote. Yeah, that's cool. And
yeah.
okay, so I have a lot of like in detail routine questions prepared, but
Hmm.
first because there are like some people coming, so we sparked some interest there. I hope. So I wanted to ask like a simpler question first. Like if someone is starting in cyber, like wants to be a red teamer, how does that person go about it? I know that's like not a like a fresh graduation person just yeah comes on the market and wants to be a red teamer. That's not doable maybe, but like what experience does he need before? Like what do you yeah what is your opinion?
Yeah, so it is doable. I would say
Oh,
it's very rare, but I have met people who right out of college managed to secure like a junior red team position. Very rare. That's not typical. So expectation management there. The reason being is because typically for a red team, um, I would say for like a penetration tester, you're going to have a fairly defined skill set, and that's going to be the penetration testing methodology, which is pretty well defined and a fairly mature methodology at this point. For red teaming, it's a little bit different. They kind of recruit people from all aspects of IT. So you'll have people who were sysadmins that get into red teaming. You'll have, like me, I was a former, I was a full stack developer. So you'll get like software engineers that come in. Um, uh, Network engineers are common as well. Just different aspects of the IT world, I guess, because the idea is that you want to have a team that can work together and rely on each other's expertise to compromise the target. So, for example, one of the best red teamers that I know, he was a sysadmin, and so he just does incredible work internally because he knows Active Directory inside out and backwards, and so he's able to exploit that um, pretty pretty well. um, so yeah, that's I guess that's kind of the idea. So I would say to prepare for like a red team role, you're of course going to want to start with fundamentals that are common to everybody in IT, which would be, um, I'm not necessarily encouraging getting like these certifications, but like the subject matter from like A plus, Net plus, Security plus, that kind of broad surface level general understanding of, you know, like help desk technology, the things that you'll see in environments, as well as the fundamentals of networking, especially subnetting. That like subnetting, love it or hate it, I mean it's a pretty important skill to have, and understanding network protocols and common protocols and things like that. And then the security aspect of like understanding the fundamentals of what a security program is, what a security program does, how does a red team fit into the security program, things like that. Um, and then, unless you're one of the lucky few who managed to land, you know, their first job as a junior like red team operator, you're going to want to probably work in IT, like in some function in IT. That could be networking, it could be software, it could be, you know, whatever interests you really. And then get some experience doing that and focus on doing, to the best of your ability, doing those roles securely. So you can be a network engineer that focuses on implementing network technologies securely. You can be a software engineer that focuses on writing secure code, understanding like the OWASP top 10, understanding what makes a web app or an application vulnerable and how to exploit it. Like you can, you know, start learning those things, those skills. And then for system administrator, I mean, just doing that job and learning all of the technologies that you touch as well as you possibly can, like on a fundamental level, and just getting a really deep understanding of how they work and learning how to research and learning how to take good notes and things like that. That's kind of the foundational stuff that everybody needs to do to really be able to like progress into red teaming, because like I said, you have to kind of understand how the technology works so that you understand how
Yeah.
to avoid detection. So not just to attack it, but also like you have to understand what you're doing and how that might show up for a blue team. And so you have to make decisions about whether or not you're going to run an attack or how you're going to modify an attack to avoid detection. So those are just the kind of things that you have to keep in mind. Um, so yeah, general IT background is a great place to start. If you want to go to red teaming, of course, penetration testing, web app penetration testing, any of those offensive security tracks are going to be helpful. The training there is really robust these days. Of course, the staple being OSCP, to kind of get people's feet in the door. It's not necessarily what you're going to be doing every day on the job, but it does teach the mindset of like, I hate to say it because it's kind of cliche, but the try harder
Yeah.
mindset of like, um, you know, I didn't get in this way. Well, I got to get in somehow. So you have to do your research and find alternative ways. And sometimes the answer is not always going to be clear. Um, so more than the skills it teaches, the actual mindset that it teaches is
Yeah.
probably the biggest benefit.
Being
Plus,
persistent, yeah.
yeah, persistence. And then the it teaches the mindset, and it also is still probably the number one certification that HR representatives look for when they're hiring for like a penetration tester. Uh, there are other great options out there. TCM Security, of course, I worked there for about 2.5 years, just about. You know, they've got the PNPT. I was one of the first people to take that, like one of the first 100 to take that before I started working there, and I highly recommend that certification. As far as like a penetration testing certification, it's 100% practical. You have to do everything from reconnaissance all the way through briefing the client on the report that you wrote. So it's a very good curriculum to get your hands dirty doing like penetration testing things. Um,
Yeah, I really like the reporting part in that
mhm.
certification, and that you have to report it to the client. So it's kind of like, I don't think other certification have that. OECP only wants you to submit a report, but actually presenting to the client is a very difficult part of it, and very important in my opinion to know. I know it's really cool that you can hack all the systems and gain access everywhere, but can you explain it to the client in the way that he understands? Because the client has the money, and and he doesn't
Mhm.
understand what actionable things, yeah, he could like do there. So like what is the point of like hacking everything if the client does nothing because he doesn't know
Exactly.
what to do, so that's
Yeah.
like very good.
At the end of the day, the client's not really paying you to hack them, right? Like that's part of the job, but what the client's paying for is the product at the end, which is the report.
Yeah,
And then you have to be able to brief the report to the client. Maybe not necessarily as a junior, but in some places, yeah, a junior will do that sometimes. Typically, it's going to be like the project manager or the team leader, somebody kind of a little bit higher up. But the fact that you're getting the experience doing that in your education, I think it's great. Kind of before I forget, I'm going to go a little bit on a tangent here, but I highly recommend taking some sort of a technical writing course. It doesn't have to be formal through a university or anything, but just um, I went through the university route for my undergraduate, so I took a technical writing course, and I use that probably as much, if not more, than what I use from the technical side of things in my day-to-day job, as far as like writing reports go. Because at the end of the day, if you can't write coherently and cleanly, you're not going to be able to explain what you did to the client, and you're not going to be able to give them as good of a product as you possibly can, and that's what they're paying for.
yeah,
So yeah, big kudos to TCM Security for the PNPT because of that component of it. And then I haven't had the chance to go through the material completely, but Hack the Box also has a few certifications now in their academy, and I've heard nothing but good things about them. So
yeah.
that's another good place to go for like the penetration testing skill set.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm still like jumping into in the middle, but I'm actually doing the bug bounty one now,
Mm-hmm.
and the material is really good. The labs are really good, and I did the OCP course, and I was not, I was not impressed with like the quality of the course itself. The labs are like really good, so I will say nothing to the labs. They're like perfect, but the content is like it could be better for that price. So, but with Hack the Box, I don't really feel like that. They explain it really well. They explain things that I didn't understand, although I did like all of other courses, and those courses
Yeah.
didn't, explain it in a way that I could like, get it. But like Hack the Box, you read once and okay, now I get it. It's like so.
Right. Right.
I really recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I won a voucher for OSCP. I didn't actually sit for the exam because I'm working on my master's, and I had to choose basically between um, completing OSCP or getting a good grade in my course. So I chose school. But I did sit through at least the first few modules of OSCP, and I kind of had the same impression where the material is it's a different pedagogy, I guess, or different methodology of like how they want to instruct you. They want to give you kind of like breadcrumbs to kind of get you interested, and then they don't test you on what they teach you. They want you to go and do research
Yeah,
and
do
find
it
the answers of
yourself.
your
Yeah.
own. Which, yeah, like I get it, but I don't think that that's what students are necessarily expecting when they're paying for educational material. So I kind of have a different philosophy. But I do agree, for what I have seen from the Hack the Box courses, the material is very well written, very well thought out, very comprehensive. I just, yeah, haven't had the chance to go through all of it yet. Um, yeah, those are probably the three that I would recommend for like your typical penetration testing skill set. You can take that, like you can take the penetration tester mindset plus like whatever generic IT background you have, or whatever, not even generic, it could be like a niche like network engineering, and then you stack on penetration testing methodology on top of that and that skill set. I'd say that you'd be in pretty good shape to start learning, or maybe start interviewing for red team roles. um, I don't think that you can really, okay, I take that back, I forgot the CRTO, certified red team operator from 0 Point Security, is a great course for red teaming because it teaches you how to use a C2 framework. And it's very affordable as well.
I really want
I
to
worked.
go after that
Go
one.
ahead.
Yeah, I really
Oh,
want
I
to
was going
do
to say,
that one. Yeah.
yeah, I've worked through a lot of it. I had to take a break, but I learned a lot, so I highly recommend that one. Um, your org that you work with might not use Cobalt Strike, but most of the frameworks are going to be very similar. And um, once you learn how like a C2 works and you get comfortable using it, then you can go and you can use the other frameworks and try them out on your own. There's a lot of free and open source ones. The biggest problem or the biggest hurdle with Cobalt Strike is that it's expensive. But if you're working for a professional red team, odds are you're going to have the budget for that for your team. So, um, and I guess I should do a plug for Portswigger Academy, right? For web stuff.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think,
I think it's the best web, yeah,
yeah,
security, and it's
yeah,
free.
it's really
So
good. The only thing is the certification I think is $100, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think I remember reading that you need a professional license for the certification. I could be
yeah,
wrong on that.
yeah, yeah. You have to
So that
get the
kind of,
Burp Suite Professional too,
okay.
because you have to use Collaborator and
Yeah.
have like a server there to send your exploit. So yeah, although I tried to do it without, there are like some ways, but it takes too much time to go
Hmm.
with like the yeah sneaky way, so you will not pass if you don't have the professional version. So yeah, that's unfortunate,
Good
but
to know.
it's still affordable even if you get it. So
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable. I mean, it's within the ballpark of what other companies charge for certifications. I would say even kind of in the mid to low range for price, assuming it hasn't gone up quite a bit since I last looked. I think it was $99, and then I'm pretty sure the license is right around $500. So it's not cheap, but I mean, it's compared to some other companies, it is reasonable. So,
yeah,
and you don't have to get the certification. Like if you're getting started and you need some way to demonstrate that, hey, like I understand this material, and here, like I can prove it. I have a certification, and you're like pretty new to the industry. That's a good way to kind of demonstrate knowledge. It's not the end all be all. Like having certifications won't automatically guarantee you a job. You still have to do the interview and pass the interview. And before that, you have to attract the attention of the hiring manager and make sure that they're willing to consider you for an interview. So there's other things that you might want to consider as well to kind of round out your resume, like home labbing and doing personal projects and things like that. But um, yeah, in general, I think those are pretty good courses. Probably the best ones out right now for learning the actual like red team skills, the penetration tester skills, and the CT frameworks and stuff. Um, I will say SANS is excellent, but I almost never like to mention them just because they price so many people out. Um, if your employer is willing to pay for it, or if you have a scholarship, or if you have the GI Bill, if you're an American veteran, or um, whatever else, I mean, the quality of the courses are pretty excellent, but it really just is too expensive for me to recommend to somebody paying out of pocket, unfortunately. But if you ever have the chance to go to one, I would say go. So
yeah, thank you. That was like super. I didn't think of some of the things that you mentioned, so thank you for like your perspective on that. I hope some people will find it useful and like valuable. So now I'm going to ask a lot of red teamer questions. So yeah, I guess yeah, let's go. What are some of the biggest challenges you face when emulating adversaries? And like before you answer like all of those questions, you just answer in a way that you can disclose. I know that you work with clients, so in a way that you can answer. So anything is good for me. So, there you go.
yeah, I mean, so for emulating adversaries, I think that we have a really good tool. Like we have some good tools now with like the attack frameworks, like the MITRE attack framework and the I think Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain and things like that. Um, because you can look at TTPs, tactics, techniques, procedures from real world adversaries that target your client's specific sector. So if it's fintech, like the financial industry, or if it's government or whatever, healthcare, you can look and see what real world adversaries are being seen to use in the wild, and you can try to emulate those techniques. Um, I would say the difficulty. I don't even know if it's really a difficulty. obviously you're emulating them and you want it to be as realistic as possible, but also you have to do what you know to get in. So like if you're doing a red team engagement and you're looking at a target or a client or whatever, and they're in a certain sector and you're not super familiar with the TTPs from the real adversaries, you might not want to use those exactly in an engagement, but you can still get pretty close by doing um, the standard I guess reconnaissance and exploitation and things like that you would do, like the very baseline general ones, like the exploiting vulnerable services, social engineering attacks and phishing and things like that. Those are fairly evergreen, and you'll see those across sectors, across industries. Um, there, there's almost like an art, I guess, to making it as realistic as possible, and it just takes experience and a lot of time studying and staying up to date. That's probably the most difficult thing, is staying up to date with what's actually going on in the wild. Um, yeah, I hope that was clear. I feel like I kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
rambled on that one a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, it was good. Thank you. So the next one is, what would you say is the hardest part of the job that most people don't think about?
Probably that you can't really talk about all the cool stuff you do all day. Like you can't, like, you can sanitize it, but you're going to sign NDAs. You're going to um, be privy to very sensitive information about specific clients, and whenever you do something cool, you're going to want to tell people, but you have to be very mindful that you're being trusted with that information, um, and that letting it out could cause like very real damage to your client, and that's what we want to avoid. Like we
Yeah,
don't. It's kind of like the uh, uh, Hippocratic oath that the doctors take, where it's first do no harm. So we want to kind of follow that, where we don't want to actually harm the client. But yeah, that's one of the harder things, I think, for me anyway, because I always, when I do cool stuff, I want to talk about it. But it's just one of those things that comes with the job. Now you can sanitize it. You can take, and so say like there's a custom web app inside a client's environment. You can take the methodology and you can go and create like a boilerplate web app, and you can include that vulnerability, and you can then show like, hey, here's this web app and here's this vulnerability and here's how I exploit it, and then like whatever, chain it to something else. Um, but you're not actually going to be able to say, hey, like I backdoored all the ATMs for this one specific bank in Europe or whatever, like, which a friend, has a fun story about some ATMs that he encountered in an engagement. But like I said, can't really share me all the details on that. So that's the unfortunate part of it. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's others, but that's the one that really pops out to me, is not
okay,
being able to
so
talk about the web.
since you mentioned that like a tiny little bit, so maybe there are like some more like stories that you could share, like what was the most surprising and unexpected way you've seen someone gain access to a system, if that's something that you could share.
Um, yeah, I had a buddy who told me a little anecdote, if you will, about an engagement that they did, where they had a unprivileged access to a web application for a client, and they were able to get RCE on the client system, and then they were able to dump the SSH creds on that system and get root access to the machine from there, just with some really fundamental. I don't even want to call them exploits. It was more like DOM manipulation, because all the filtering and all the sanitization was happening on the client side. So they were able to just modify stuff with a proxy, send it to the server, and then it gave them access that they weren't supposed to have. And then from there, the sanitization went in place. So the web application was trusting input, because they assumed that the client was filtering it. From there, they were able to dump the SSH key and or the private key, and they were able to SSH into the system. Um,
That's
that
pretty
was a
cool.
that was a
Yeah.
yeah, pretty good one. So yeah, whenever you think about web application penetration testing, I mean, like, you're like, oh, cool, like it's a web app, I dumped the database or whatever. No, like you can potentially root the machine and take full control over the box, and then use that as a pivot point. And yeah, that was a really interesting story for me anyway. Um,
Yeah, that makes me think that maybe I should appreciate web apps more because yeah, they're like actually because when I started to be a penetration tester, I came in with 5 years of experience of being a web app like manual tester and automation. So it was testing but not security. So I was kind of like okay, a lot of web apps, maybe I want to do something else like like a network or infrastructure
mhm.
pen test. And I was like kind of, oh, I want this, but actually it made me realize that actually the web apps are pretty cool and like powerful like way to gain entry. So
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they're running on a system, right? So,
yeah,
and then you never know what kind of privileges they're giving the web server. So if they're for some reason running a web server as root, which obviously isn't a good idea. I mean, if you find one little vulnerability that gives you, um, some sort of like a command injection or whatever, you can pretty easily root a box. Then all of a sudden you have root access within the network, or at least like internal. It could be the DMZ, and you might have to further pivot, but it's a foot in the door at least. Um, yeah.
yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, my next question is, well, I'm sorry, I'm just like throwing questions there, like
Oh, you're
without like
fine.
really connecting that. But yeah, I have a list and I wanted to respect your time. And now I'm like, yeah, I'm talking too much. Okay, the question: what's one tool that you can't live without on a job and why?
Oh, that's a yeah. I'm kind of torn on this one because I honestly think that the real answer is boring, which is Nmap.
Yeah,
You can live without Nmap, but it definitely speeds things up and makes life a lot easier. Um, you can write your own port scanners and stuff, but of course, like why reinvent the wheel? But yeah, so Nmap, I I quite like Burp.
me too.
um, very very helpful tool, not just because of the proxy stuff, but also because well, I guess it is because of the proxy mainly, but I've got the development background, so what I like to do with Burp is I like to listen in on like the network calls and stuff and look and see what's actually going on under the hood with the network. And then, if I find that there's some sort of exploitable condition on a certain web application or something, you can really just export the network calls, the network requests, and you can modify them and put them in like a Python script or something to automate it. That's one way that I really like to use it, is to kind of like create little scripts that just automate the exploit or whatever, even if it's normally a pretty manual task. Um, so that's a big one for me. And then of course all the other great features of Burp. I use the decoder a lot, surprisingly, um, and the encoder too. Yeah, probably more than I use repeater,
Yeah.
which is kind of surprising. Um,
When I asked that question, actually, what came to my mind was the screenshot tool and like the
oh
reporting
yeah,
reporting tool. So that's surprisingly that's not the hacking part, but like the like documenting.
yeah, that's a really good point actually. Because like the native, if you're using Windows or whatever, the native screenshot tool is not very easy to use. Um, so any screenshot tool the ones that I really like are the ones that have built-in editors like Snagit. Um, but there are plenty of free tools that make that pretty seamless to where you can just do a keystroke and take a screenshot, and then
Yeah.
now it's done. You don't have to worry about coming back after the engagement and trying to look at your notes and walk yourself through to get all the screenshots you missed. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I will follow with the next one. So, have you ever been caught mid operation? If so, what did you do?
I got caught. I got caught on a physical. um, but the client let me get away with it because I managed to recover. It's kind of a funny story. So we had a site, doesn't matter, some company that made widgets or whatever, and I knew that they had like an admin office for like the HR work and stuff. And so I was trying to get access to the back of the house, the back of the facility, by going through HR to do like social engineering. And the way that I did that was I said, "Hey, I'm looking for," or I got sent over here from the other building, and I'm looking, or yeah, I'm looking for, and I gave a generic name, which the first name that popped into my head was like Mike or Rick or something like that. And I said, I got sent over here to talk to so and so. I'm from the other building. I'm just doing whatever, insert whatever job here, like checking the network or I can't remember. I might have said I was like working with the help desk or something along those lines. The admin people did everything right, and they stopped me and they asked me questions, and eventually I realized like they weren't going to let me in without actually knowing the person. So I told them that I got the name wrong and I got the room wrong, and so I told them, yeah, I just got the text message from my supervisor and I'm going to go to where I'm supposed to be. And so they were like, okay, and you could tell that they were kind of weirded out by it. So I ended up leaving the building, and it was around lunchtime. So I went around back of the building, and everybody was leaving for lunch. And I decided I was just going to try to piggyback in because that was one thing that the client specifically requested that we check for was piggybacking. And so I waited for this one lady. I waited in like the smoking area, and I was just kind of hanging out. And I waited for a lady to leave. When she left, I stood up and I just went straight for the door, and I grabbed the door and I walked in, and she turned around and looked at me and said, "Hey, sorry, I don't know you, and I just have to make sure that you're supposed to be here," which, good on her. She did the right thing. So she came and talked to me, and she's like, "Who are you looking for?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm looking for," and I gave her the name again, Mike, Rick, whatever. And she's like, "Oh," and then gave me a full name, Mike, whatever, Rick, whatever, last name. And I'm like, "Yeah." And I said, "That works in IT, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay." That's who I'm here for. And she said, okay, well, let me go get him. And so she opened, so the door was like a man trap. So there's like a door and then there's
Oh
another
yeah.
door. It's not a functional man trap. It's just, I think, more about keeping the AC from getting out in the summer and things like that. Um, more, yeah. So she opens the second door to go into the building. And then the first door on the left was that guy's office. So there's like nothing I could do. She went and got him, and he came and talked to me, and he asked me who sent me, and I actually gave him the name of the client, like the security contact, and that was one of the people that was outside, and he was standing in the doorway, and he looked around and saw the guy as I said his name, and he's like, I said, "Do you know him?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's sitting right there," and I'm like, "Okay." And so he caught me, and we're like, "Okay." And so the client's like, "Hey, this is a penetration tester, blah blah blah. We're just testing piggybacking." He's like, "Okay, cool, got it." So I got caught there. Now, the funny thing was the guy was like holding the door open to talk to the point of contact. And when he left to go back into his office after the conversation, the door, um, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it wasn't like stuck open. There was like a feature built into the door to where you could prop it open by pushing it all the way. And so he walked into the building and the door was completely propped open, and so it didn't shut. And so I looked at the POC and I was like, "Hey, does this count?" And he's like, "Yeah." So he let me
Yeah.
continue the penetration test at that point. So I got caught, but like a mistake during me getting caught allowed me to continue. So that was pretty funny. Um, yeah, that was like a classic example of the employees all did the exact right thing that they're supposed to do. Just by a technicality, the door stayed open, and so I was able to continue into the building. But um, definitely, they have some good security awareness in that facility, and I was very proud of them as like a penetration tester. Even though I got caught, that's never ideal, but you want to see your clients win. So um,
Yeah, I was
yeah, that's
actually
probably
really
my
really
favorite one.
happy when you said that she turned around and like, oh, who you are? And like, yeah, because most, yeah, I wouldn't say most of the time, but like people don't really want to engage with you. They don't
Hmm.
really want to trouble. They are in a hurry, so that's like really good. Yeah, they are aware of, yeah, all of the things. Okay,
Yeah.
so because you kind of like a bit mentioned that, but do you have other like situation when you leverage social engineering in an unexpected way to gain access to a target?
Yeah, actually. So I let's see. So there's a facility. It was like a shared office building. so there was multiple tenants, and I needed to find a way to get into the building, like initial access to get to the client office space. And it seemed to me that the easiest way to do that would be just piggybacking during like morning rush hour and also during lunch. And so my partner and I, we went to a FedEx and I bought a laptop box, and like one of the ones that you use to ship a laptop. So it had like the padding and stuff in it, kind of bigger, but it looks like the sort of thing that somebody would deliver to like an office building. And then uh, I told the FedEx employee that we were from a local university, and we were in their theater department or something, and we needed like a prop for like somebody playing a postman on a play, something along those lines. And they printed out like a test label that prints out whenever they turn on the printers for me. So I got, the box, the test label, whatever. And then I took that back to the building, and I just kind of hung around in the parking lot and waited on like a group of people to walk up. And then I said, "Hey, do you work at whatever company?" And they said, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "Oh, I'm next door over at," and then I gave them another company name that had to do with engineering. And I was like, "Hey, FedEx accidentally delivered this package. I was the one that signed for it, and I wanted to make sure it got to the recipient." And they asked me who, and I said, you know, the my security contact's name is what I gave them. And they said, "Oh yeah, he's on whatever floor." Um, and they let me into the building. Um, I don't think they let me into the office space though, which was good on them. But I did manage to get into there later. But that was kind of my social engineering prop, I guess, was I had this FedEx box, and so I got into the building, and then once everybody cleared out from the lobby and stuff and went back to work, I found another way to the Target office, and I just kind of hung around in the office in the common areas and stuff for, it might have been 2 hours before anybody said anything to me, just with this delivery box. And like I went and got a cup of coffee and just kind of hung out. So I use that as a prop. It's like an excuse for why I was there. Um, yeah, it worked out okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool story. Yeah, very good idea. And okay, so I have a question in the chat. It's like a bit a different barrel kind of a question, but there it goes. Hello, I have a question. I'm 40 years old and ex-math teacher. Got my PNPT and ICP in 2 months. Applying for the jobs with a nicely polished CV and trying to be active on LinkedIn. What can you suggest me to land on my first job on pen testing?
Okay. There's a few people that made career changes and landed into penetration testing. And so I think what I hear the most often from people who are a bit older, I mean, not that 40's that old, but um, people who are a bit older making a career change, they get a little bit daunted by kind of the ageism. I don't think that you're ever too old to become a penetration tester, so try not to let those negative thoughts get to
Yeah,
you. Just keep applying. It's really a numbers game. Just understand that right now, like tech as a whole is um, very challenging to get interviews and get jobs in right now, just because of the way the economy is and the way AI is, causing tons of layoffs and things like that. And people are betting on AI instead of people, or not people. Companies are betting on AI over people. Um, I would encourage you not to get discouraged. Continue applying. It's really a numbers game. The more jobs you apply to, the more likely it is that you'll get an interview. The more interviews you do, the more likely it is that you will get a job. I would say the biggest thing that you could do in the meantime to kind of buff your resume up a little bit, which you said it was polished, so that's great. Um, Work on some things like home labs, or you can work on things like doing write-ups for CTFs, like Hack the Box, things like that. Um, if you're feeling a little bit froggy, you could do something like Bug Bounty to look for like CVEs and add CVEs to your resume. Joe Helle, Helle, Joe, Joe. did a good talk on at Wild West Hack and Fest a few years back about basically how he was bored one night and he found two CVEs and how it's really not as hard as people kind of think it is. You can get a CVE from any open source application on the internet. So you can go to GitHub, download a open source application, get it running on your system, which might actually be the hardest part. Joe actually one night after his talk, actually we did this on his laptop where we just downloaded a couple of random open source apps, and we found 2 or 3 vulnerabilities that we were able to exploit within probably 15 minutes. We didn't actually apply for the CVE or anything, but just a fun thing that you can do, and you can apply for CVEs and you can get them and put them on your resume, and that looks good. It's not something that everybody has, and so that'll definitely set you apart. You're also going to want to prepare for the interview. If you haven't done a penetration tester interview before, they can be a little bit stressful. The ones that I've done, the ones that I've sat through have almost all been scenario based. I have applied for one job where they had like a practical exam just to get to the point where you can apply. So like the website for the application was just a login screen, and it was just a password, and there was no username, and there's no way to register. It was kind of like the old school hack the box where you had to hack the login to register an account. So you might see stuff like that. I would say it's definitely less common, but for the actual interview itself, it's typically going to be a scenario-based thing where you're going to sit down with 1 or 2 interviewers, and they're going to say, hey, here's the situation. This is what we're trying to do. How would you approach this? And then they want to see you walk through the methodology, and they're going to want you to be as specific as possible about what you're doing. If you don't know something, you're going to want to say that you don't know. You're going to want to research that after the interview, and you're going to want to follow up with them. That's a good practice. But for more specific guidance on that, I would say check out, I think it's the Cyber Mentor's actual YouTube channel, the Cyber Mentor on YouTube. He has a few mock interviews, at least one. It's very good. It's with a senior red team, or I think it was a senior penetration tester, but the interview was very good, and it was pretty much in line with all the experiences that I've had interviewing for penetration tester roles and red team roles. And it's a very good example of what you can expect. But that's the biggest thing. A lot of people get to the interview and don't know what to expect. That was me my first time. I got to the interview, I didn't know what to expect, and I wouldn't say I choked, but I got beat out by actually a buddy of mine. So it worked out for him, but we're still friends, so it's okay. Definitely prepare for the interview as best as possible, and I think that the best way to do that is to watch mock interviews and participate in those things.
Also, I want to add something to what you just said, that sometimes they give you like a hint what they're going to ask you in the job requirements. Like if they, for example, mention like you will be testing business applications or something like that, so maybe they will ask you about business vulnerability, business based, or maybe they will ask you about web apps, so that's going to be OWASP top 10, what is SQL injection, what is XXS, how would you exploit it, and like questions like that. So yeah, so read the job requirements well.
Yeah.
And that will be like a hint, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Just like you would tailor a resume for a job, tailor your interview practice sessions for the job as well. If you're applying for a web app position, you're going to want to brush up on web app stuff. If you're applying for network, then brush up on network penetration testing stuff. That's really good advice.
So, but also like what you just said, I wanted to later reiterate that again, that I became a penetration tester in my like mid-30s. So there's never too late. You don't have to compare yourself with like other people. You have other skills, other like experiences that maybe young people like fresh graduates don't have. So don't really compare yourself. You're like unique, you're special, you're different. So just embrace your your strengths, and I would advise maybe sharing. You said your LinkedIn is top notch, so that's already good. But like being active and showing that you are active, like you're doing labs, you're doing projects, you're out there, you maybe you're sharing your knowledge, maybe you just learn this or that. So like being active and like posting about it, it's a really good way to be noticed. And actually, the employer could come to you and invite you
Yeah.
to the interview. Then,
Yeah,
okay.
networking can't like the importance of networking can't be understated too. If you have any local conferences or anything, even virtual, put yourself out there. Go out there to the networking events. Go to meetups. Go to B sides. Go to like anything, and just meet people in the industry. Because after a while, like your resume is great for getting your first job, but after a while, it gets to kind of where if you get laid off or if you lose your job or whatever, then that's when you reach out to your friends or people in your network and you say, hey, like, I'm looking for a job. I got laid off. Like, does anybody know of anything? And that's where you find out about the jobs that may be coming up soon that aren't posted yet. That's where you find out about like, just interesting opportunities that you might not get if you're just trying to go through the front door through like Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever. But yeah, it's really good advice. Um,
Yeah, I thank
I
you
w-
for saying that, because actually that's true. I was looking for a job last year, and although I applied like a lot, like myself, I was very active. But what got me a job, what got me an interview was like me being active on LinkedIn and people like coming after me, and also like me being like a speaker on conferences. So that's like kind of like part of being active, but
yeah,
also like the networking. So people that knew me said, for example, oh, I watch you on LinkedIn for 3 years now. I want you to come to an interview here with us, and like things like that. So networking, like me asking people like, oh, maybe you have like can recommend me, or like things like that, help me actually get real interviews that went to like next stages, and not just like recruitment agent saw like my profile is great, my CV is great, and then invited me to an interview that I bumped. I really get really stressed on like technical interviews, so I bumped those, because then yeah, I feel like my brain is like empty and I cannot explain simple things. So it's good like that there are like other ways to also do it, like through networking, through yeah, actually some people like could give you a chance and without like grilling you a lot. So yeah, I will not dig my own grave here. Maybe I should stop talking, but yeah, it's like actually going to like a technical interview is super stressful for me and probably to other people. So it's good to practice that, like prepare, like if you don't know the answer, then know the answer like after the interview and then repeat it before the next one. So I always say that if you don't get the job, that's actually maybe a good thing, because maybe that wasn't your environment. So everything happens for a reason. That's what I believe. But also that you can practice for like the dream job that you wasn't like brave enough to apply for. So every job interview is useful in my opinion. And so thank
yeah, I
you for
agree.
giving that answer. I have some other questions now I want to ask. So what are like one misconception about red teaming that you would like to debunk, if there are like any that comes to your mind?
Um, I don't know if it's specifically tailored toward red teaming or if it's just like probably honestly cybersecurity in general. But it's a lot less of like the Mr. Robot Hacker Man kind of stuff and a lot more like
Yeah.
honestly, it's a lot more reading and research and writing reports than anything else. I feel like for every hour I spend hacking, I probably had to read for at least an hour, probably more, 1 to 3 hours, doing research and things like that, or writing a report or whatever else. There's a lot more to it than just the hacker stuff, which everybody wants to do, and that's the fun part and the I guess cool part. But um, it's definitely a lot slower paced than what you might be expecting, if that makes sense. Um, Less stuff for penetration testing. I mean, of course, like you've got a timetable that you have to get the job done in. But for red teaming, when you have long engagements, you're going to be doing a ton of research, just looking at every possible avenue and eliminating them one by one until you can find one that works. That's kind of the name of the game. And it's very slow and very methodical. But yeah, that's the one that comes to mind for me.
Thank you for answering. That's a great answer. And I have another question from the chat. Because also you mentioned conferences before, so I wrote that down. So what is your favorite conference? What is the one that you would maybe recommend going to?
I'm going to caveat this by saying that I've never been to DEF CON. It's on my to-do list, so
Mine
take
too.
this with a grain of salt. But I think that Wild West Hacking Fest is probably my favorite conference that I've been to. So I yeah, I really enjoyed it. Just the atmosphere is great because it's kind of in the middle of nowhere in South Dakota, out in Deadwood. Um, the weather's perfect that time of year out there. It's kind of chilly, but um, definitely like moderate to chilly weather. And then it's just like very condensed with some of the coolest people that work in cybersecurity all in one place. Um, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my time out there, and I'd love to go back another time.
Are you planning to go this year?
I'm not planning on it yet. Ask me maybe in July. I should know
Okay.
better.
Yeah, I already sent my call for papers, so fingers crossed. I will
Awesome.
go.
Yeah, good
But
luck.
even if I am not selected to be a speaker, because I already had like a presentation on the Denver West Hacking Fest. Well, I think it was in February. So if
Hmm.
they, because of that, maybe they will not select me for Deadwood. But even if that will not happen, I definitely want to go. It's on my very highly on my list. So yeah, fingers crossed again. Okay, I'm going to ask next question. How do you balance stealth and effectiveness when evading detection?
So yeah, for this one, I mean, you kind of get a feel for the skill level of the defenders. And in the beginning, you're probably going to be a lot like you're going to bias your actions towards stealth. Gradually, you might escalate a little bit and be a little bit riskier once you realize that, hey, like nobody's picking up, this traffic that I'm sending, or something along those lines. Or maybe if it's getting later on in the engagement, your client might ask you to ramp up the noise a little bit more, and then you'll ramp up the noise and try to identify the threshold where the blue team will detect. But really, it's like a cost versus benefit analysis where you have to understand your tool, you have to understand what your tool does, what that's going to look like if there was an appropriate detection, how would it be detected, and then you kind of have to gauge the maturity of the blue team to understand, like, are they likely looking for this, or is this kind of a niche thing? Am I writing like a custom tool? Like, what are the odds of them detecting it, and is it worth the risk of getting caught? Like, is this going to put me in a position to where I capture the crown jewels for this company or this client or whatever? And if so, it might be worth taking a little bit more of a risk, but still, you want to bias toward being on the stealthy side. So there's not, I don't really have, or I'm not aware of any like hard and fast rules or anything. It's just kind of feeling out the environment, seeing what you can get away with, and then yeah, doing that cost benefit analysis. So
Yeah. So okay. So you mentioned the blue team already. So that's actually my next question. Have you ever had a moment where the blue team completely surprised you?
um, I mean, aside from getting caught by trained employees on physicals, I haven't so far. I've only been red teaming like full time for about 6 months, so I'm still pretty early on. I'm sure at some point the blue team's going to completely surprise me, but so far I haven't had that experience. Um, some of my very good friends have, and I love those stories because at the end of the day, like, we're all blue team because red team's trying to make the blue team better. Um, we're trying
That's
to
right.
we're trying to get them ready for the actual event, which is going up against real world adversaries, and they're absolute badasses for doing that job. So we're all blue team, and so that's what we want. We want them to surprise us. We want them to win. We want them to have some victories. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that day.
Yeah. And so the next question is a bit connected, but yeah. So what's a common mistake you see junior red teamers make?
Um,
If that's something you can share, yeah. So
yeah, I don't know if I really have a good example here. I think that the main thing is that I've seen, I guess, is getting really like getting excited over something before validating whether or not it's actually a thing. So like maybe you do a scan and like it says, hey, it's vulnerable to this, or it's got this package in it, and this package has like a 9.8 CV or whatever, you know what I mean? And then they get really excited and they kind of are like, oh wow, like I got this, and then it turns out that it's actually not exploitable in the environment for whatever reason. Maybe there could be a WAF in front of it, preventing them from actually getting the exploited traffic or the malware, the exploit traffic to the vulnerable code. Um, so I guess it's probably the main thing that I've seen. Yeah, so just a little bit of patience, do due diligence, make sure that it's actually vulnerable before you go reporting it, I guess.
yeah, and
But
go like super excited about it.
yeah, I mean, it is exciting, but it's easy to. Usually, whenever I feel excited, I think, okay, well, let me make sure that it's actually what I think it is first, because I've kind of been bitten by that myself too, where I think something's, oh wow, this is vulnerable, and then it's not, like for one reason or another.
Okay, so my next question is I'm starting to run out of questions, so that's actually like a cue for you too that this will not last forever, you know, we are about to end soon, but okay, the next one is what's the craziest or most unexpected thing that happened during an engagement? If that's something you could share.
Um, yeah, so I had it. This was another physical, so I I found a key that got to the target room from the client. I found it in a office unlocked, just sitting out there. Like it was in a drawer, but I found it and I realized what it was because it was the only other the sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. It was the only door in the building that matched that key because it was supposed to be like a higher security key. But since I found it and it was unlocked and whatever, I had a mold on my person, I guess, with modeling clay in it. And so I was able to take a mold of the key, and then I took it back to the hotel and I made a copy of the key later, which it's called casting.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm sure there's videos about it on probably Deviant Olaf's YouTube channel, and I'm pretty sure Lockpicking Lawyer has some as well. They're like the videos are out there if you want to learn more about it. But basically, you create a copy of the key in the field using a little cube of metal, and it's got a fairly low melting point, and so that's what makes it perfect for doing it in the field. But anyway, so I did that, and then I took the key back just to prove like persistence, and I used it to unlock the door, but um, the neck of the key broke off in the keyway, and then I had to turn it with a because it was like a deadbolt, so it was heavier than what I was anticipating, and I should have done this from the start, but I broke the key first, and then it was too late. So I ended up using a turning tool, um, like from the lock picking kit, and I was able to turn the deadbolt because all the pins were set, luckily, even the security pins. So it worked out. I got in, but um, there was like um, it was like the custodian company or the custodial staff showed up for the evening to start doing their work. And so I heard them like pushing trash cans around, and I realized like, oh crap, like I have to take this lock apart to get the key out. So I had to disassemble this. It was like a smart lock, and I'd never seen one before. But luckily, like I took my time and I put all the pieces where I would know where they go back when I went to put it back together. I got the key out, and then I put it back together, and literally as soon as I saw the trash can coming around the corner from the custodian, as soon as the trash can came around the corner, I pushed the door shut and locked the deadbolt. So I managed to like not get caught just in the nick of time. But that was definitely a stressful
Yeah.
few minutes for me there. That was the most like James Bond I've ever felt like in my entire life, but yeah, it was kind of silly. I mean, I would just recommend using a turning tool if you ever cast a key in the
Yeah.
field and try to use it. So
That's a very cool story, and like I wanted to add, like if anyone wants to like find out how that is made, like in real life, I have a video on my YouTube where I like share my experiences from the cover access team training when I actually make the like
oh, awesome.
my key on my like I have the cast, I have like the print in it, so and I close it and then I pull the metal and I wait a bit and then I pull the key and then I try it in the lock. So yeah, that was like pretty cool training, and there's like also you can see in that video because yeah I shared like we did on yeah I'm getting excited because I'm really
Yeah,
I love that, so wanted to share like that we did the under the door tool there, and at the beginning of the course Brian gives you like a lock, and you just have to take the lock and do like this hand movement and the lock breaks. So that's like pretty good for your imagination, that you don't really have to know the like the configuration. Like if it's like a smart lock, just look what kind of a lock there is. Maybe you can like break it or like pull it apart, or maybe shim it or something that you don't really have to be very like do super like difficult things. Maybe that's like a easier way out of the situation. So okay, I'm getting like excited here, so I'm going to ask the next one. So if you weren't
yeah.
working in cybersecurity, what do you think you'd be doing instead?
Oh, I don't know. um, I mean, before cybersecurity, I was in the military. I probably would have gotten out regardless. I wasn't a huge fan of doing like government contracting, doing the same job I did in the military, but as a civilian, I wasn't a huge fan of that line of work. I think I'd be interested in doing something like not necessarily like a private inspector, but doing like specifically OSINT investigations for clients. I think that sounds like a really fun thing to do. Uh, definitely lends itself to cybersecurity quite a bit. But man, if I didn't do anything in tech, I don't know. I'll have to think about that. Like ideally, I want to, get the money from tech and then retire and go be a gardener or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
live in a cottage in the woods with no electricity for the rest of my life. But um, I don't know. As my entire life, I've loved tinkering with electronics and stuff like that. So maybe like engineering or something along those lines. Um, it's just I don't know. There's so much overlap, so I feel like it's kind of cheating or like a cop out to say that, but it's just there's so many interesting things that you can do with like engineering, and it's very relevant, I guess, to modern life. So yeah,
Yeah, okay. So
probably something like that.
yeah, I actually have like the same dream as you, like living in the woods with no
Oh,
neighbors around me. So actually, I got like a house near the forest right now, because I used to live in the capital of Poland. Now I live like in a different place. So
oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's like I'm trying to not wait for like like not wait for summer, not wait for my vacation, not wait for this or that, because I used to
yeah.
do
Just
that
do it.
before. So just do it and like live the best life right now. So what I'm trying to do is like design a life that I don't really need vacation from. So that's
Hmm.
actually me being in cyber, me being in pen testing, because that's like really excites me, and like I feel like maybe fulfilled is a good word, but in a way. So I feel like I'm building that now, and I always wanted to be a keynote speaker, like travel the world. So now I have this. When I send my call for papers, I can go, to, for example, to Denver or like somewhere, and
Hmm.
like try. And sometimes the conferences pay some of my expenses. So that's already like, yeah, you don't really have to be like a rich person to travel. You just have to
Right.
be smart about it in a way. So I'm still I'm really happy
No,
that you came to my podcast, because you're like a super smart person and you have a lot of experience.
thanks.
So yeah, this is like super valuable to me, and I hope to other people as well.
Actually, I did think of one, like a proper one that doesn't have to deal with tech as much. Probably a locksmith because I do like the physical security stuff quite a bit. So Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But yeah, you're right. Building a life that you don't have to take a vacation from is nice. So that's kind of the same idea that I have, and like what I'm hopefully working toward. But yeah, it's wonderful. I'm really happy for you to hear all that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we bet on LinkedIn. I think, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely working for you. I definitely noticed you on LinkedIn when
yeah. High five.
yeah,
My LinkedIn buddy. Okay, so
yeah.
next one is burnout prevention. Like, what would be the best ways to, in your opinion, to prevent burnout, to not get burnt out?
This is going to sound kind of counterintuitive, and there is an exception to it, and I'll get to that. But it really comes down to discipline, and the discipline being that. So this is a really easy field to get sucked down endless rabbit holes and to feel like you need to always be studying and always be grinding and always be doing something. You have to have the discipline, especially like once you're employed and once you're like, I would say like secure in your employment or secure in your career to where like you've got the experience, you've got the certifications you need, your resume is good, like you can come to work and work, like you don't have to spend time outside of work studying to just do your fundamental job stuff. Because like the studying never goes away, but um, you have to have the discipline to where you come to work, at the start of the day, you leave at the end of the day, and you do other things. You have to have hobbies. You have to make time for meaningful, relationships with other people, friendships, whatever. Um, do things like at least have one analog hobby, at least one outside of tech, outside of not staring at a screen. Um, just yeah, I think that's the biggest one for me because I personally did the opposite of that to where like I started out by okay, have these goals and then, I have a family, so I have kids that I was worrying about like providing a good life for. So I was kind of sprinting to get into cybersecurity as fast as I could. So, I would work and I'd spend my free time studying and doing whatever else, working through my degrees, getting jobs, doing some side work outside of my 9 to 5, certifications, like all those things. And it took up all my time to where I was, working 9 to 5 in either IT or cybersecurity. And then I was also studying several hours a day on top of that. And then I just wasn't making time for like the things that actually helped me decompress, which would be like working out or, going for a walk or getting outside, getting some vitamin D, things like that. And I just didn't make time for it. And so by the time that I finally landed the like dream job that I really wanted or whatever, I guess I was already like burnt out by the time I got the job. And so that kind of led to a downward spiral because it doesn't get easier, like you still have to learn, you still have to keep up
Yeah,
that pace. Um, so it's just, I think the main thing is just like you have to be disciplined enough to say, okay, like I did enough today and now I need to go do something else and step away from the computer. Uh, that's the best advice that I could give anybody.
yeah, that's a very good advice, actually. For me, that's cycling. So, but if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh man. Oh
That's
God.
maybe
One.
a bit like a curveball, but you can do top three if you want.
Oh man. So I think the biggest piece of advice would have to be, I mean, one, I would tell myself like it does get better. Um, I had a lot going on when I was younger, so um, yeah, just knowing that it gets better. Like eventually, you're going to kind of get into the sort of life that you kind of are dreaming about right now. But I would definitely tell myself to only pick one major because I had the bright idea the first time that I attempted college, and this is a big reason why I ended up dropping out. I had the bright idea to double major in two completely unrelated fields. So I was trying to do computer science and music performance, and then music performance by itself is like you might have like 15 credit hours in a semester, but you have a ton of like 1 and 0 credit hour courses that still take time and still take effort, but they just to make it work as a degree program. It just doesn't make sense to give you like 3 credits or whatever for them. And then trying to do that in a completely unrelated field like computer science with, all the math and physics and things like that. And then for some ungodly reason, computer science 101 at that university started with C. I'll never understand why. But yeah,
Oh,
I probably would have told myself just to pick one major and stick with it. And I think computer science might have been the better of the two options there for me. So yeah.
yeah, but you weren't not alone. I also did two majors like at the same time. I did like two related to each other. So half of my subjects that I had from economics got like signed out like with a final grade to the second one. So I did management and marketing was the second one. So kind of like I did half of the second one because there were like a lot of connected subjects and on the same university. But yeah, you
Yeah.
were not like the only one that were like a bit maybe yeah, ambitious there.
Yeah. It's kind of silly to think back on it because I had a full scholarship from like the Florida Bright Futures program. I met the requirements or whatever, and so I had a full scholarship. And yeah, just that goes away if your grades don't keep up. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, then you have to find other ways to pay for school. But I don't know, school's probably optional to be honest with you these days. So
Thank you for sharing. That was like a really good answer. Yeah, got me thinking as well. But okay, three last questions. Outside of, I already see your book, so I want to ask about your books really bad. But the question is, outside of the hacking in InfoSec, what's something you're passionate about that most people don't know?
um, I guess I mean I have a few things. Probably the main thing for me is my children. So I have two children. So most of my time outside of work and studying and all that is kind of dedicated to taking care of them and making sure they're okay and have what they need and stuff, and trying to position myself to be the best dad that I can be. So that's one. Beyond family, I've got rather I've learned to be passionate about community building. I used to kind of be a lone wolf, but I've had some people come into my life in recent years who showed me that community building doesn't have to be scary and helped me start a meetup and or yeah, start one. We kind of merged with another one, and now we have a big happy Fredericksburg hackers meetup back in my town where we meet once a month to do hacker things. But um, I know that that's technically hacking related, but for me, it's less about the hacking and more about the building of a community in one place, and it's allowed me to meet a whole bunch of people and develop some friendships that I never would have, and that to me has been critical in my 30s for sure. And then, of course, you mentioned the books behind me. I'm a huge Red Rising fan, huge Red Rising nerd. It's a series written by Pierce Brown. Um, if you're into space opera, sci-fi,
Yeah,
that
definitely.
sort of thing, it's a it's a good one, and it's been in kind of production hell for years. But I know that they're eventually going to release a ideally like a 10 episode per season kind of adult like series, I guess, on like some streaming provider or something along those lines. I don't think they're doing a movie anymore, but definitely some sort of like a
TV show.
space opera kind of sci-fi show. So I think that it's going to be an awesome time to be a Red Rising fan. But yeah,
Thank you for
highly
sharing.
recommend those books if you're into that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I didn't hear about that one, and like I am a big fan of Philip K. Dick books. I think I read them
Mm,
all, so I think it will kind of like complement what I already read before. So yeah, thank you, and like really cool, yeah, display there. Okay.
thank you.
Okay, my two last questions that I always ask at the end of the stream is like your favorite hacker movie and your favorite food, because I'm a foodie and like, yeah, I'm interested.
Favorite hacker movie? That's hard to pick just one. It depends on if you, as long as you consider physical security hacking, then it's got to
Yeah,
be sneakers for me. Yeah,
yeah, it's a good
I
one.
love sneakers. Um, I was pleasantly surprised by one that I'd never heard of a few years ago called Black Hat, and I think it captured hacking really well as far as like what it actually looks like. Where just as an example, one of the scenes, the like hacker guy was sitting at the main character. He was sitting at his desk in a hotel waiting, bored out of his mind, and then his partner, which was a lady, was she was all dressed up and she went into the facility and she had her USB stick with malware on it, and she was trying to social engineer her way into the facility to get to a point where she could plug in the malware. And then like you see the guy, he's bored while she's doing all that, and then eventually he catches a shell, and then he's like, all right, now it's time to go to work. But a lot of the waiting and stuff, like I felt like it was captured pretty well, and that's probably one of the more underrated ones that I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about, in my opinion. um do you have a favorite hacker movie?
Mine, yeah, it surprised me with that. Actually, I think it's the Matrix because yeah, I watched it like 1,000 times. I
Yeah.
think the first one. Uh, I, yeah, but and my favorite like TV show is Mr. Robot. It's kind of like reminded me. I didn't work yeah in tech when it came out, so it kind of like reminded me what I wanted to be as a teenager, and
Hmm.
it was kind of like a start, like a slap in the face, and start for me to, oh, I really wanted to do that, like starting to go in that direction and like starting to learn that. So I think it's like big kudos to the TV show, and it's like really well shown. But
Yeah, it's
also
really well done.
I really like, for example, war games. I think it's like pretty
Hmm.
well made movie as well, like pretty accurate. I like hackers, but like for the hacker culture like vibe, it's kind of like a silly movie, so it's not technically accurate, but like the hack the world and like the hacker
Yeah.
culture, the clothes they were wearing, like music, was like pretty cool as a movie altogether. So yeah, that would be some of them. But yeah, what's your favorite food now?
Favorite food. So typically it's some type of barbecue. I really like brisket. Any type of like smoked meats, really.
Mm.
It's just like I don't know. I grew up in the South, so I love barbecue. Barbecue sauce probably my favorite dressing, or condiment rather. And then any type of cornbread. So yeah, I go pretty nuts about that. Um, that said, there's actually a German restaurant in town here, and they made the best pierogies I've ever had in my entire life. So maybe pierogies are one of my favorites now.
That's
Uh,
interesting because pierogies are a Polish dish. I don't think it's German, but maybe it's kind of like a
yeah,
fusion.
yeah, they might have co-opted some of your dishes then.
Yeah. So yeah, but when you mentioned German cuisine, I already like mouth watering because yeah, they have
Yeah,
like the sausages. Like Polish make really good sausages, but the Germans like, oh, don't get me started. Oh, the Weisswurst is so good. It's okay. It's like I get excited. I get really excited with food, so it's like that's me. Okay. So thank you for coming to my stream. If you have anything
yes.
to add at the end, now it's your time.
I mean, I don't really have anything to add. Just thank you for being patient with me because the last time we tried to do this, I was sick, and then this time I had to be late. But I'm glad that we were able to make this work. Because I had a great time talking to you. It's nice to actually talk to you instead of just over LinkedIn. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for having me. I had a good time.
Thank you, and also and again, really sorry for like the yeah errors at the beginning with the sound, but we got it handled. So I'm happy that we got like this working and we had a chat. So and yeah, it was really nice to meet you in person. So yeah,
Yeah.
again, thank you for coming, and I'm going to wave now. So yeah, thank you. Bye.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.